G'day and welcome to another Talking Head video where I try and have my say about regulations and the people who make them and where this whole hobby is headed in terms of control and restriction and the things that we don't really like. Right, New Zealand. I want to talk about New Zealand. New Zealand is the country where I live, and well, like every other regulator, our regulator says that they're at the leading edge of UAS regulation. They lead the world and they want to continue leading the world with innovative regulations, and in some respects they're right. I've got to admit they've done things like the shielded operation, which is a brilliant idea that lets you fly a drone or a model aircraft in close proximity to an airport so long as you are below the level of the trees or the tallest object within 100 metres. And in American terms, that's about 5/8 of an inch or something. And as long as there's some kind of barrier so that if something goes wrong, your model will not drift onto the runway and potentially endanger an aircraft. Right, so that's brilliant. That's a fantastic scheme. Other countries I know are looking at taking that on board as part of their regulation. That's great. But they sort of dropped the ball after that because our regulations have all sorts of stupid things like there is no lower limit. If I fold this piece of paper into a plane and throw it, it's apparently as dangerous as a 14-kilogram octocopter flown over a busy street in downtown city. So, yeah. Anyway, enough of that. What am I talking about today in terms of New Zealand regulation? Well, our regulations will be up for review soon. They've been out since 2015, so it's over 3 years since they actually launched the regulations we currently fly under, and it really is time for review. And I know a lot of other countries are also reviewing their regulations. The UK has recently reviewed theirs and added the 400-foot height restriction, and strangely enough put just a 1 kilometre exclusion zone around most controlled airports, which is really, really weird. That's nowhere near enough, certainly on the approach and departure paths. On the sides, it's heaps, because planes don't fly low beside an airport. They fly low as they approach and depart. So, yeah, things to think about. Anyway, what's concerned me, what's prompted this video today is a press release and a draft document that has come to circulation. And I'm going to talk about them a bit. First, I'm going to talk about the press release. Now, this is a press release made by Airways. Now, Airways is part of the whole regulatory framework. We have the New Zealand Civil Aviation Authority. They're the people who make the rules. And Airways is the sort of the administrator of the airspace. They're the people who handle air traffic control and all the other bits and pieces that go into making the airspace safe from the point of view of a day-to-day management perspective. So Airways are the people who sit in the towers and say, you know, flight 37, you're cleared for landing on runway 16 and all that sort of stuff. They are the day-to-day operators. The CAA people, they just sit behind their desks and they say, well, people should do this and they should do that. That's the distinction. And then we have the Ministry of Transport here in New Zealand. That's a government department which oversees all these other departments. It's the department responsible for making sure that the transportation sector operates efficiently, effectively and safely. So they have they're right at the top. So what's happened initially is Airways, the day-to-day management people, issued a press release. And when I saw this, I could not believe the misinformation that was in this press release. I'm going to read a little bit for you now. It says, more than 10,000 drone pilots are now registered with Airshare to fly in New Zealand airspace. And what's Airshare? Well, Airshare is a site that CAA and Airways put up to try and get more information from the drone community and to try and encourage drone users to play by the rules and to register and all sorts of things. It's kind of a voluntary thing. It doesn't really know what it is, to be honest, but it's a hub they've got online hoping to create an interface with drone operators, right? So 10,000 New Zealand drone operators have signed up, and they go on to say, drone pilots have enthusiastically adopted Airshare since its launch in December 2014. Enthusiastically, that's fantastic. So 10,000 people have signed up at Airshare, voluntarily registered, because it's not legally required to register if you fly a drone in New Zealand. You don't have to do that. But these 10,000 people have voluntarily signed up enthusiastically. So how does that tally with the real figures? Well, I'm going to turn now to a draft document released by the Ministry of Transport. That's that government department right at the top. They recently said in this draft paper, approximately 281,000 New Zealanders fly or own drones. So let me just get this right. Let me do some mental arithmetic here. We've got 10,000 out of 281,000 have signed up enthusiastically to the Airshare Hub. That is just over 3.5%. I'm sorry, Airshare, but I don't see a 3.5% sign up as enthusiastic. I see it as pretty damn pitiful, to be honest. 3.5%, seriously. And so that sets the whole tone for this Airways press release. It's obviously full of crap. They are embellishing the facts. They're making stuff up. They are using words that should not apply to the figures they're presenting. Anyway, let's move along. Interestingly enough, in the Ministry of Transport report, they also go on to say, they say approximately 281,000 New Zealanders own or fly unmanned aircraft, drones in New Zealand, versus 5,000 piloted aircraft. So when you have 5,000 registered aircraft in New Zealand, and 281,000 people fly drones. Goodness me, that means that the unmanned aviation community massively outnumbers the manned aviation community by a huge chunk. Now, to be fair, they're comparing apples with oranges. They're comparing the number of people who fly drones with the number of registered aircraft. I suppose when you think about it, most people who fly drones have their own. You don't often go and fly a mate's drone. You've usually got your own. So, and if you're looking at it, that means probably 200,000 drones versus 5,000 manned aircraft. It's hugely biased in favour of unmanned aircraft, isn't it? So you would think that when it came down to making the rules and consulting with the people to get an idea of what rules should be put in place, that the larger group by a factor of 40, which is the unmanned aviation community, should have a fairly proportionate say to what's done. But no, we hardly even consulted at all. All the noise comes from the manned aviation community, that tiny little percentage of people using the airspace. Anyway, let's move along now. The Ministry of Transport report also goes on to say there are approximately 130 commercial unmanned aerial vehicle operators certified by CAA. So the figure gets even worse. We've got just 130 registered drone operators, certified drone operators in New Zealand, versus 281,000 drone operators in total. So the commercially certified group is a really tiny fraction of the total drone community. And yet, those few people that are consulted within the drone community are almost invariably the commercial operators. They are the smallest group, but they get the most say. That doesn't make sense to me. But let's move on. Now, it says also, this is really interesting, didn't know this, approximately 200,000 drones were used by tourists in the past year. And again, let me do the comparison. There's 200,000 drones used by tourists in the last year versus a total of 5,000 registered aircraft in this country. So even the tourists are outnumbering the manned aviation community by an enormous percentage. Yet they don't have any say. Have no say in what's, virtually no say, practically no say. We don't. A good example is there was a survey held a while ago in which some of you people participated here in New Zealand. You weighed in after watching my video and gave your thoughts. That survey, the results were put online, they're still online, but it obviously didn't, the answers they got were not the answers they wanted. So what did they do? They ran another survey. And where did they get that survey was restricted pretty much to just people who use the Airshare website. That 10,000, that 3.5% of the total drone community were asked, what do you think? Well, that's hardly a representative sample, is it? Because that's the group that only the group who were keen enough to go and register themselves. They're probably the goody two-shoes, the ones that the teacher's pets, the one who's always, oh no, you've got to follow the rules, got to do everything right, oh no, we love you. Not the average person in the street. Now, something else to consider with these numbers is we've got 281,000 people flying drones in New Zealand. Huge number of people flying drones in New Zealand. And yet we see very few drone incidents. Very few drone incidents. We've had a couple of, we get the pilots always reporting, oh, we saw a drone at 97,000 feet and we're sure it was a Phantom 4 and the serial number was, I couldn't read the last digit of the serial number, but I'm sure it was a Phantom. That sort of crap. We get a lot of that like everyone else does everywhere in the world. Pilots associations around the world appear to have adopted the policy of if you see something and you don't know what it was, then report it as a drone. Because we're seeing that now. I mean, in the Daily Mail just today, a pilot reported a drone at 15,000 feet. And, at 15,000 feet, your average passenger jet's moving at a fairly lickety-split pace. Yet he was able to identify it was a drone, definitely a drone. So, and I don't know of many store-bought drones that'll go that high. If you build a special purpose, but we had those guys in Russia went to 30,000 feet, but that was not your average store-bought drone. Your average Phantom, 5,000 feet? I don't know, 6,000 feet? 15,000? No. I really don't think so. Someone will probably reply saying, I took my Phantom to 15,000 feet, in which case we'll come and arrest you. we've got so few complaints. Remember, there are 40 times more drones than registered aircraft in New Zealand, but there are not 40 times as many complaints. In fact, there are still more. If you look at the AirProx reports, the safety reports in the CAA website where they publish them, there are still more issues with manned aircraft nearly crashing into other manned aircraft than there are with drones crashing into manned aircraft. It still outnumbers it, even though it should be 40 times more drone incidents than manned aviation incidents, because that's the ratio of craft. So you have to say, based on these figures presented by the Ministry of Transport themselves, drone flying is really, 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 really safe compared to manned aviation in terms of how well people behave themselves. For example, here is a story that came up the other week. Some guy buzzed someone they didn't like on a beach using their Microlite. And I think they got 6 months loss of license or something and a few $1,000s fine. This is terrible. If you did that with a drone, can you imagine the story? But this was just a little story tucked away on a news page somewhere. If that had been a drone, if someone had deliberately buzzed someone with a drone, it would have been all over the world's media. You know, drone used as weapon. This guy uses a full-size manned aircraft and it gets barely a mention. So there we go. And it happens. So there you go. It shows you that this sort of stuff is happening with the manned aviation community. Some of them are just as bad or worse than drone operators. But as I say, the thing is that 40 times the number of craft, less than the number of complaints. We are so damn safe, it is not funny. Everything is working very smoothly. Obviously, there's nothing to complain about if you're getting such a tiny amount of problems from such a huge number of people operating drones. But wouldn't you know it, that doesn't stop some people from complaining. Now, the Airways, the press release put by Airways, let me quote from it again. This is the CEO, Graham Summers. This is what he had to say about the issue of drone registration. Remember, drones have not been an issue, and 10,000 people out of 281, so just 3.5% think that registering your drone is such a good idea they're going to do it. But he says, we would like to see mandatory registration and training requirements for drone pilots implemented. That's another word for forced upon you, to make sure that all airspace users are able to continue to fly safely. Now, listen to that. There's so much in there. By saying to make sure that all airspace users are able to continue flying safely, clearly states that right now they're flying safely. Right? You can't continue something if it's not already happening. So he's admitting it's safe. Everyone's flying safely, not a problem. Yet he wants to see mandatory registration and training. Why? Well, if it's working, do not fix it. This is just a way of, tightening up the screws. Training isn't free. Registration won't be free. This is a great way to make money. Airways makes a lot of money out of landing fees and air traffic management services. They are looking for the coin and they see an opportunity. Whoa, 281,000 people. Imagine if we build them all $50 a year. Woo! This is what's happening. This is ridiculous. This is another money grab and it's unacceptable. Now, and Airways themselves surveyed 1,460 drone pilots. And these were the pilots on Airshare, the ones who decided to voluntarily register, right? The 3.5%. They surveyed these people and they say that 60% supported mandatory registration and training. Well, as I said, these are the goody two-shoes guys. These are the guys who want to register anyway, even though it's not a requirement. And so they think everyone else should register too. This survey is bullshit. It is a self-selecting group and therefore the results are totally skewed. And what about the 271,000 other drone users who don't appear in this survey? When do they get their say? These are the people who have said, I don't want to register. I see no point in registering. It is no value to me and I'm flying safely as confirmed by the figures, the actual statistics. So why would I register? Yet Airways, the company that makes the coin out of airspace, they want you to register. It's important to have you registered and trained. Yeah, I'm sorry. This sucks. This sucks a whole lot. Now, just to go on a bit more, the paper from the Ministry of Transport talks about integration of drones into the national airspace. They have got it. If that's what they're talking about, then they've lost the plot too. Do you want to integrate drones into the airspace? No, you don't. You want to give drones their own piece of airspace where there are no manned aircraft. And I've spoken about this before just recently in my 500-foot video, which got tagged as not suitable for all advertisers and therefore it wasn't promoted by YouTube, therefore hardly anyone saw it. Thank you pilots who did that. Anyway, non-integration is the secret to success. Keep the drones out of the navigable airspace, out of the 500 foot and above, and you won't have any problems, will you? Because If there's no drones and no aircraft in the same place at the same time, there is no risk to anybody. But no, they want to integrate them. They want to integrate them into the national airspace. No, don't do that. You haven't identified the real problem. If this is one of your solutions, you don't know what the problem is. Now, let's make a point here, make a distinction. These people are probably talking about, large commercial drones, the ones that are going to deliver pizzas and small children to school and things like that. That's not what people are using drones for now. That may be the future. In fact, I don't think it's going to be as big as everybody says. I see drone companies, really well-funded commercial drone companies, folding left, right, and centre. One folded just last week in the news, and that was really well-funded, but they're not making any money. Because it is a solution looking for a problem. Because we even have these air taxis, right? Oh yes, with these flying air taxis, you'll be able to get on here and we'll fly you to a destination you can get off. We already have those. They're called helicopters, and we have helipads. And you can jump on a helicopter, fly to a destination, jump off. And if while you're flying along in your helicopter, the engine stops, you can auto-rotate to a pretty safe landing. If you're flying along in a quadcopter and the engine stops, well, let's hope you're flying over a cemetery to reduce the transport costs for your burial. No, it is ridiculous. This whole industry has been hyped and blown out of proportion. We'll have people doing surveys and taking pictures of houses for real estate. That's happening already, but that's not high-risk operations. That's not high risk. Phantom 4 hovering over a house isn't going to kill anybody. And if it's hovering over a house low enough to get some good pictures, it shouldn't be in the same airspace as a manned aircraft. So the risks are low. We can keep that spacing up there and run all these small UAVs, all these small drones quite happily. So that's the situation in New Zealand. We seem to have a bunch of clothheads who know nothing, who ignore the facts and numbers, and who even disagree. And we have obvious motives, obvious factions and groups and commercial imperatives going on. We've got Airways saying enthusiastic response with 3.5% who've signed up for voluntary registration. And on the basis of that, they do a survey of those people who've already signed up and say they're all in favour of registration. Of course they are. They signed up to your bloody website. You ask the other 371,000 and see how you get on, or 271,000. See how you get on. I think you can get a totally different result. And in fact, as I mentioned earlier, when CAA held its survey, to which a lot of you replied, they got a completely different answer. So that's why Airways ran their own survey. They didn't like the answer they got from the CAA survey, so they thought, we'll pick our respondents carefully and we'll get the results we want, because they want you to register and pay them heaps of money. This will happen all over the world, and it is happening all over the world. Which brings me to the next step. What are we going to do about it? I mean, here in New Zealand, there is no group. We've got Model Flying New Zealand, who represents model aircraft flyers, and that's fine, that's great. But that's 2,200 people out of 281,000 drone flyers. It's not a very representative set. So I don't want to, but I'm seriously thinking I may have to set up an organisation to represent everybody else, all the other people who are not already affiliated with someone like Model Flying New Zealand, those people who do not have a voice, who are ignored. The 271,000 people who are flying so safely that although they are 40 times the number of manned pilots, they are a tiny fraction of the complaints and the prosecutions by civil aviation. The super safe group, the group who are doing everything properly, who are looking out for people's safety and who are basically engaged in what is intrinsically a far safer pastime than flying with yourself in an airplane, they need a voice. They need a voice. And do I have to give them one? Do I have to set up an organisation to do that? I don't know. You tell me. And what I'd like you to do also is, if you're in New Zealand, tell your friends about this video. If they've got a drone and they're not interested in flying model aircraft, tell them about this video, because if they are keen enough, I will set up a representative body and we will have a unified voice to civil aviation, to Airways, and to the Ministry of Transport, because if you don't do it, if we don't do this, as you can see, not going to get any traction whatsoever. Although we're in the massive majority, we're going to be completely ignored. And that's not democracy, that's not justice. So tell me what you think. That's it. This has droned on a bit. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you're not a subscriber to this channel, give it a go. Sign up and see what you think. You can always unsubscribe later. And I do appreciate all the comments I get, so give me your comments and I will read them all and have a chuckle and respond if necessary. There you go. Thank you for watching. This has been another one of my ranty talking head videos. And if you don't like it, just skip it next time. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.